Tonight, we imagine a world where Troy was never destroyed, and history learned how to remain gentle. Morning light continues to arrive at Troy without announcement, spreading across stone that has known the same angle of sun for generations, touching walls that were never blackened, never repaired in haste, never renamed. The city rests where it always has, between the slow water and the patient land, and nothing in its posture suggests that it expects interruption. The air carries familiar weight, shaped by salt and dust and the mild scent of worked wood, and the streets accept footsteps as they always do, neither remembering nor anticipating, only receiving. The houses closest to the inner paths open their shutters in a practiced sequence that has no origin anyone recalls. Wood meets hinge, hinge meets air, and the sound folds gently into the general presence of the morning. Inside, vessels are moved, cloth is shaken once and then laid flat, and water is poured with the same measured care that shaped the hands now performing it. No one remarks on continuity. It is simply the condition in which the city breathes. Stone lanes curve without urgency, guiding movement rather than directing it. Their surfaces hold a soft polish from centuries of contact, not worn thin but made smooth through familiarity. Where walls meet the ground, lichen has found its favored shades, growing slowly enough to seem permanent, though it is always changing. Children step around these patches not because they were instructed to do so, but because the path has always bent that way, and feet learn the city before language does. The market does not announce itself, it gathers. Tables appear as they always have, aligned by habit more than plan, each one carrying objects whose value is understood without emphasis. Grain rests in shallow baskets. Textiles breathe quietly in folded layers. Metal tools lie cool and unremarkable. Voices move between these surfaces at an even level, never rising beyond what the stone can comfortably hold. Exchange happens through gestures refined by long use, and time stretches within these moments, accommodating repetition without boredom. Above the market, the upper terraces receive the sun a little later, and this delay has shaped how people there move. Mornings begin slower on those levels, and the architecture reflects that patience. Doorways are wider, steps shallower, walls angled to receive light without glare. Shadows slide across surfaces in ways that have been observed so often they have become part of orientation. People know where they are, not by markers, but by the quality of light touching their skin. Learning in Troy does not gather in one place, it circulates. A child pauses beside an elder who is repairing a net, and hands are guided without explanation. A young woman listens as an older voice recounts a method for aligning stone that requires no tools beyond sight and breath. Words are offered as accompaniment, not command. Memory passes laterally rather than downward, moving across the city like air moving through open doors. The harbor holds its shape with quiet confidence. Ships arrive and depart without ceremony, their hulls familiar in proportion, even when their origins are distant. The water receives them evenly, never disturbed enough to draw attention to itself. Ropes are tied and untied with movements that resist embellishment. Goods change hands with minimal inspection, trust having become a structural element of trade rather than a sentiment. Along the water's edge, stone steps descend into shallows that are clear enough to show the slow arrangement of pebbles beneath. People sit here not to watch arrivals, but to rest within the sound of water moving against itself. The rhythm is uncounted. It does not suggest progress. It offers presence. Season follows season in Troy without narrative. The shift is registered first in texture rather than temperature. Air thickens or thins, light softens or sharpens, and the city adjusts without record. Roofs receive new layers when needed, not according to calendar but by observation. Gardens change their palette gradually, and the city accepts these variations as it accepts everything else without comment. Language in Troy has expanded without breaking. Words have gathered meanings like sediment, layering gently, never displacing what lies beneath. Old phrases remain in use, not preserved but lived with, their edges softened by time. New sounds enter from travelers and settle into daily speech if they fit comfortably. There is no effort to standardize, no sense that clarity requires uniformity. Understanding arrives through context and shared rhythm. The walls that surround the city stand not as boundary but as contour. They define space without asserting separation. Openings are frequent and unguarded, shaped more by foot traffic than by design. From above, they trace a line that feels more like punctuation than enclosure, marking where the city pauses before becoming land again. At midday, the soundscape changes subtly. Tools are set down, not simultaneously but as each person reaches a natural pause. Eating occurs where one happens to be. Flatbread is broken and shared. Fruit is passed from hand to hand, and water is poured with care to avoid waste. There is no central signal for rest. The city exhales when ready. Shaded courtyards hold conversations that drift without direction. Topics are introduced and released without insistence. A comment about the alignment of stars fades into a memory of a similar sky years before, which then dissolves into silence. No one fills the gap. Silence is not absence here. It is another form of continuity. Work resumes not because it must, but because hands find their tools again. Craft in Troy favors durability over display. Objects are made to remain, and this intention shapes their form. Decoration is minimal and often unplanned, arising from the hand's preference rather than a pattern. Over time, these preferences become visible as subtle variations that distinguish one maker's work from another's, though no signature is required. The archives of the city are dispersed. Records are kept in rooms that are also lived in, written on materials chosen for longevity rather than elegance. These texts are consulted when needed and ignored when not. History is not curated. It rests alongside daily life, accessible without prominence. Children move through these spaces absorbing structure without instruction. They learn the width of passageways by carrying baskets, the height of thresholds by ducking without thought, the timing of shade by where elders choose to sit. Their games follow the contours of the city, and their laughter does not echo sharply, having learned where sound settles best. As afternoon light stretches, the color of stone warms, revealing layers that were cut and placed long before anyone remembers. Repairs blend seamlessly into original work, differences visible only to those who study closely. Even then, the distinction holds no weight. Function has always mattered more than origin. Beyond the city, fields extend in patterns that have shifted incrementally over generations. Boundaries are marked by trees rather than lines, and these trees are cared for as markers of agreement rather than ownership. Harvest arrives when ready, not when expected. Storage is sufficient without being excessive, and distribution follows established relationships rather than calculation. Travelers arrive with stories that do not seek attention. They are listened to with interest that remains even, neither amplifying nor diminishing what is said. Some details are remembered, others fade naturally. The city does not organize itself around these narratives. It absorbs them as texture. As evening approaches, the harbor reflects light in elongated patterns that change minute by minute. Boats settle into place, their movements slowing as if guided by the same breath. Lamps are lit gradually, not to push back darkness, but to accompany it. The glow they offer is steady and unassertive. Meals in the evening take longer. Preparation is unhurried, and ingredients are handled with familiarity. Spices are used sparingly, chosen for harmony rather than contrast. Eating becomes another way of participating in the city's rhythm, each person contributing their presence without emphasis. Stories are told without climax. They recount observations, sequences of days, minor adjustments made, and lessons learned quietly. Listeners drift in and out of attention without judgment. The telling continues regardless, shaped by the voice rather than the audience. Night settles evenly across Troy. The sky above shows patterns that have been traced so often they feel close, though no one claims ownership over them. Stars serve as reference rather than symbol. People move indoors or remain outside according to preference, not instruction. Sleep arrives in layers. Some rest early, others later, and the city accommodates both without conflict. Sounds diminish but do not disappear. A door closes softly. Water shifts against stone. Wind moves through high openings carrying the scent of earth and distant growth. Dreams, when they come, are shaped by familiarity. They wander through known spaces, adjusting proportions slightly, bending time without breaking it. Morning will return regardless, and this assurance allows rest to deepen without effort. In the quiet hours before dawn, the city holds itself. Nothing prepares, nothing concludes. Stone cools, wood rests, air remains. And within this held space, Troy continues as it always has, not marked by events, not defined by absence, simply present within the slow, unbroken movement of time that does not seek to be noticed and therefore remains. Within that held stillness, small motions occur without attracting notice. A woven mat shifts slightly as air passes across it, fibers responding with a softness learned through use. Clay vessels retain the day's warmth and release it gradually into rooms where breathing remains slow and uncounted. The city accepts these exchanges without marking them, allowing temperature and texture to settle into balance. Near the inner paths, a cat moves along a ledge that has supported similar weight countless times. Its paws find familiar edges, guided by muscle memory rather than sight. The stone beneath carries no trace of passage, offering the same surface to every step. In corners where light does not reach, coolness gathers evenly, forming pockets that persist until the sun returns to that angle again. In a courtyard sheltered by tall walls, water collected earlier rests in shallow basins. The surface remains mostly still, disturbed only by the faintest vibration traveling through ground and masonry. Reflections drift across it slowly, shaped by the movement of leaves far above. No one stands to observe this. The water continues regardless. At the edge of the upper terraces, woven screens soften the passage of air. They are adjusted earlier in the day according to the direction of breeze, and now they remain as set, fulfilling their role without further attention. Threads hold their tension evenly, showing no urgency to loosen or tighten. The sound they make is barely distinct from the night itself. Inside workshops that will reopen later, tools lie where hands last placed them. Metal rests against wood without marking it. Handles retain the contours of grip, shaped gradually by repeated contact. These objects wait without anticipation, existing fully within their stillness. Beyond the walls, grasses bend and return upright in a pattern that never settles into repetition. The movement is uncoordinated and steady, guided by air currents that carry no message. Insects trace brief paths close to the ground, their presence felt more than seen. Soil holds moisture at varying depths, releasing it upward at its own pace. Closer to the harbor, the waterline adjusts slightly along the stone, responding to subtle shifts in level. Barnacles remain fixed, their shells closed in a state that does not change with the hour. Wooden posts rise from the water, darkened by constant contact, their surfaces smooth where ropes have passed across them many times. Lanterns left burning maintain a consistent glow. Oil feeds flame at an even rate, and glass holds the light without distortion. Shadows remain soft, extending across surfaces in shapes that change so gradually they seem stable. Eyes that remain open receive this light without strain. In sleeping rooms, bodies settle into positions refined by long habit. Breath moves in patterns that require no guidance. Cloth shifts as weight redistributes, then rests again. Walls hold sound gently, allowing only the smallest traces to move outward into the larger quiet. The city continues to occupy its space fully. Stone, wood, water and air remain in relationship, adjusting continuously within narrow ranges. Nothing waits to occur. Nothing has completed itself. Troy remains present within this ongoing arrangement, sustaining its calm persistence through the same measured continuity that allows every surface, every sound, every interval of stillness to exist without calling attention to itself. A faint warmth gathers along the inner faces of walls where stored heat settles, spreading evenly without edge. The texture of plaster holds this warmth differently than stone, creating subtle variations felt rather than seen. These differences guide movement unconsciously, drawing bodies toward places that feel familiar under bare feet or resting palms. In narrow passages where roofs lean closer together, the air carries a muted resonance. Footsteps taken earlier have already dissolved into the general quiet, leaving no trace beyond a slight displacement of dust that has since returned to rest. Corners collect this dust gently, forming soft gradients that change shape through minute shifts in air. In a room open to the courtyard, a loom stands threaded and ready. The fibers remain aligned, tension maintained by weights that hang without sway. The pattern prepared on the frame exists fully in its current state, neither advancing nor receding. Light from a nearby opening touches the threads at an angle, revealing variations in color that emerge only under these conditions. Nearby, a shelf holds vessels arranged according to use rather than display. Their surfaces show faint marks from contact with hands and cloth, marks that blend into the material without drawing attention. Each object occupies its place comfortably, supported by the wood beneath it and the space around it. Outside, the ground cools evenly. Stones embedded along paths release stored warmth slowly, affecting the air just above them. This creates gentle layers that remain undisturbed, settling into a stable arrangement that persists through the hour. The scent of earth remains present without intensity. Along the outer edges of the city, paths continue into open land without change in texture. The transition is smooth, guided by gradual shifts in vegetation rather than markers. Shrubs hold their shape in the low light, leaves arranged according to growth patterns that require no adjustment. Within enclosed gardens, water channels maintain a steady presence. Their surfaces reflect faint glimmers from above, moving without emphasis. The sound they produce remains consistent, neither drawing attention nor fading entirely. Plants nearby respond through slow movements at their tips, guided by moisture and air. As the night deepens, the distribution of sound remains balanced. A distant movement carries softly, blending into the broader stillness. The city accommodates these minor variations easily, holding them within its established rhythm. Surfaces continue their quiet exchange. Wood releases resinous notes imperceptibly. Metal cools without complaint. Stone maintains its density. These materials share the space without hierarchy, each contributing to the sustained presence of the place. Troy remains held within this ongoing arrangement, its streets, rooms, and open spaces existing fully as they are, maintaining their steady coexistence with light, air, and material, allowing the present moment to extend outward without direction or emphasis. Soft variations in air density drift through covered walkways, guided by the shape of arches that have learned how to hold space without enclosing it. These passages receive movement gently, allowing currents to pass along their length and disperse into adjoining rooms. The stone overhead remains steady, its surface marked by faint irregularities that scatter sound into quiet fragments. In storage areas near the inner courtyards, baskets lined with dried leaves preserve their contents through simple arrangement. The leaves retain a muted scent, released slowly as air circulates among them. Grain settles within its containers according to gravity alone, forming shallow contours that change imperceptibly as kernels shift into more comfortable positions. Along a shaded stairway, the steps show subtle differences in height that guide ascent and descent without instruction. Feet adapt automatically, guided by sensation rather than measurement. The stairway curves slightly, allowing light to enter at varying angles, creating a pattern that rests on each step without repetition. In an open room with wide openings on two sides, fabric hangs from wooden pegs. The cloth responds to passing air with minimal movement, edges lifting and settling in small arcs. Color appears deeper where folds overlap, lighter where threads catch the faint glow from outside. The fabric remains suspended, neither advancing nor retreating from its place. Nearby, a shallow bowl holds remnants of pigment mixed earlier. The surface has thickened slightly, forming a skin that reflects light unevenly. No hand reaches for it. The material continues its quiet interaction with air and temperature, maintaining its form within the room. Outside the immediate shelter of buildings, stone benches retain the shape of seated bodies long after they rise. The temperature difference lingers briefly, then disperses evenly across the surface. Moss along the bench edges holds moisture, darkening its color without drawing notice. Trees within the city's bounds stand with branches arranged according to growth rather than symmetry. Leaves overlap densely in some places. and thin out in others, allowing patches of sky to appear and recede as air passes through. The sound produced remains consistent, a soft layering that blends into the wider environment. Water collected in channels along the streets moves at a steady pace, guided by slight inclines shaped into the stone. The flow remains smooth, carrying small particles that settle again where movement slows. Reflections slide along the channel walls, altering shape without emphasis. Throughout these spaces, the city maintains its presence through simple continuance. Materials respond to conditions without adjustment. Light rests where it falls. Air circulates within familiar paths. Troy remains fully occupied by this ongoing balance, extending the present moment across its surfaces and intervals without direction or insistence. Across open thresholds, the ground meets interior floors without distinction, allowing dust and light cross freely. Small pebbles settle near doorways, nudged into place by passing air and the occasional brush of a sole. Their positions change subtly, arranging themselves into patterns that hold until another quiet movement occurs. Within covered alcoves, jars sealed with wax maintain a steady interior stillness. The wax holds its shape, responding slowly to ambient warmth, remaining intact without need of attention. Labels marked in simple strokes rest against the clay, readable at a glance, their ink absorbed evenly into the surface. Along the inner ring of streets, low walls support climbing plants whose tendrils find purchase along natural seams. Leaves rest against stone, drawing faint moisture from the air. Shadows form beneath this growth, creating areas where temperature remains consistent and inviting without intention. In places where stone gives way to packed earth, footprints soften and lose definition. The ground yields slightly, then settles back into level form. This exchange continues quietly, guided by weight and release rather than force. The earth retains its muted scent, present without variation. Beneath awnings stretched between buildings, air gathers briefly before moving on. Fabric holds its shape, fibers aligned according to tension set earlier. The awnings cast a steady shade that shifts gently along the ground, its edge indistinct and calm. In rooms set deeper within the city, shelves carved directly from walls support objects shaped for daily handling. The stone beneath remains cool, absorbing warmth gradually. Items placed there rest without imbalance, each fitting its space through long familiarity. Beyond these interiors, open squares hold an even openness. Their surfaces remain unoccupied for stretches, then receive presence without ceremony. Sound travels across these spaces evenly, dispersing before forming echoes. The air above remains clear, carrying faint traces of movement from surrounding streets. Throughout these layers of space, materials continue their quiet interaction. Surfaces accept contact and release it. Light settles and shifts without emphasis. The city holds its form through this steady coexistence, allowing each moment to extend sideways across stone, air, and ground, maintaining the same calm continuity without seeking alteration. Along narrow ledges where roofs overlap, fine grains of dust settle into shallow lines traced by gravity alone. These lines shift quietly as air moves past, dispersing and gathering without pattern. The ledges remain firm, their edges softened by long exposure, offering no resistance to these small adjustments. Within shaded niches set into exterior walls, small offerings of dried herbs rest in shallow bowls. Their scent remains faint, released gradually into the surrounding air. The bowls hold their position securely, supported by stone shaped to receive them without ornament. Nothing disturbs their placement. In passageways connecting larger spaces, the floor slopes almost imperceptibly, guiding water from earlier washing toward hidden drains. Moisture leaves a temporary darkening on the surface, fading evenly as air passes over it. The stone accepts this change without retaining trace. Near work tables set close to windows, thin shavings of wood collect in light curls. Their pale surfaces catch the ambient glow briefly, then settle into stillness. The scent they carry blends gently with others present in the room, forming a quiet mixture without emphasis. Outside the built spaces, low retaining walls hold soil in place along gentle rises. Roots weave through the packed earth, binding it together. The walls maintain their alignment through steady contact with weight and moisture, their stones fitting together without visible strain. Along quieter paths, small pools form where the ground dips slightly. Their surfaces remain calm, reflecting nearby textures in softened outlines. As air moves across them, faint ripples appear and fade, leaving the surface unchanged in its clarity. In sheltered corners beneath overhanging branches, leaves rest where they have fallen. Their arrangement remains loose, edges overlapping naturally. The color they bring to the ground blends into surrounding tones, adding variation without drawing focus. Throughout these spaces, sound remains evenly distributed. A distant movement passes through the air and disperses. The city continues to hold its arrangement of forms and materials, each element occupying its place within the same steady presence, allowing the moment to extend across surfaces and spaces without direction or emphasis. Under open rafters, beams show shallow variations where grain curves gently along their length. These curves catch light unevenly, creating soft gradations that remain stable as air moves past. The wood holds a faint aroma that stays close to its surface, neither spreading nor diminishing. On low tables set near walls, simple weights rest atop folded parchment. The parchment remains flat, edges aligned through careful placement. Ink markings appear matte, absorbed fully, offering no sheen. The weights apply steady pressure, their presence unremarkable and sufficient. Along exterior corridors, rain gutters carved from stone guide residual moisture toward narrow channels. The interior of these grooves remains darkened slightly, indicating recent contact with water. Droplets linger briefly at the edges, then release and continue their descent along familiar paths. In sheltered storage rooms, bundles of reeds are stacked with their cut ends aligned. The fibers maintain a dry texture, responding subtly to shifts in humidity. Light entering through small openings reveals the density of these bundles without highlighting any single strand. Near the perimeter, shallow steps lead to resting platforms that receive bodies without ceremony. The surfaces show no ornamentation, shaped solely for support. The stone maintains a consistent coolness, providing a steady contrast to the surrounding air without drawing attention. Between adjacent buildings, narrow strips of sky remain visible. Their color holds steady, offering a diffuse illumination that reaches downward along walls. This light softens edges and reduces contrast, allowing surfaces to appear continuous across space. In small enclosures used for keeping tools, hooks embedded in stone support items by their handles. The balance remains stable, weight distributed evenly. Metal hangs without sway, reflecting minimal light along curved edges. Across courtyards, fine debris collects near drainage points, arranged by slight inclines. The distribution remains orderly without intervention. Air passes through these open spaces, maintaining a gentle circulation that touches each surface in turn. The city continues within this quiet alignment of structures and materials. Each element maintains its place through simple presence. Space, texture, and light remain evenly shared, allowing the moment to spread across rooms, passages, and open ground without emphasis or direction. Within rooms that open toward the inner lanes, shallow bowls hold water drawn earlier, their rims catching a faint outline of light. The surface remains calm, reflecting the surrounding shapes in softened form. Tiny particles suspended within settle slowly, arranging themselves without visible motion. Along low parapets, birds rest briefly, their weight barely altering the stone beneath. Feathers align smoothly against their bodies, maintaining warmth without movement. When air passes, it slides around them and continues onward, leaving the ledge unchanged. In narrow workspaces between dwellings, cords hang from wooden pegs. Fibers twist together evenly, retaining tension through careful preparation. The cords remain still, their presence defined by texture rather than motion. Nearby, coils rest on the ground, arranged loosely according to length and thickness. Across interior floors, patterns formed by swept dust remain faintly visible. These traces follow the arc of a hand and the curve of a broom, marking the surface gently. As air circulates, the edges soften, blending back into the floor's natural tone. Under overhangs that shelter entrances, stone thresholds hold a cooler temperature. Feet crossing them register the change briefly, then move on. The thresholds maintain their form, edges worn smooth through steady use rather than force. In spaces set aside for quiet tasks, benches carved from single blocks provide stable support. The stone retains its shape, bearing weight evenly. Small imperfections in the surface offer subtle points of contact, guiding posture without instruction. Between the city and open ground, fences made of interwoven branches define gardens lightly. Gaps between branches allow air and light to pass through, creating a soft boundary that does not interrupt movement. Leaves nearby respond with minimal rustling, their sound blending into the ambient hush. Channels carrying water beneath walkways remain unseen, their presence known through faint coolness rising from the stone above. This coolness spreads gently, tempering the air without altering it noticeably. The stone absorbs and releases this influence evenly. Across all these spaces, the arrangement holds steady. Materials remain in relation. Light continues to rest where it falls, and air maintains its quiet circulation. The city sustains this shared presence without emphasis, allowing each surface and interval to exist fully within the same continuous moment. Near open drains set flush with paving stones, fine sediment gathers in shallow arcs. Water passing earlier has guided these forms, leaving them balanced along slight curves in the stone. The sediment remains settled, its texture matte and even. unaffected by the surrounding quiet. Inside rooms facing narrower lanes, shutters remain partially open, angled to admit a measured amount of air. Wood slats cast thin bands of shade across interior walls, their spacing consistent. These bands drift gradually along the surface, maintaining parallel alignment as light filters through. On raised platforms used for sorting materials, smooth stones serve as anchors for stacked items. Their weight rests evenly, preventing movement without pressure. The stones carry a faint coolness that transfers subtly to what they touch, creating a gentle equilibrium. In small recesses beneath staircases, stored containers occupy space efficiently. Their shapes vary slightly, adapting to the irregular stone around them. Lids fit securely, edges sealed through repeated handling. The containers remain undisturbed, their contents held in stable condition. Along pathways where walls converge, sound narrows and softens. Footfalls from elsewhere lose clarity as they pass through these corridors, dissolving into the ambient presence. The stone absorbs and releases vibration evenly, maintaining a consistent acoustic texture. Outside enclosed areas, low shrubs border paths without forming barriers. Their branches extend lightly into open space, leaves arranged in layered clusters. Air moves through these clusters freely, carrying subtle variations in temperature that pass across skin and fabric. In places where cloth has been laid out to air, fibers respond to moisture levels with slight adjustments. The fabric remains spread evenly, corners weighted to prevent shifting. Its surface texture appears uniform, absorbing light without reflection. Across flat rooftops, small accumulations of grit remain undisturbed. The rooftops hold warmth gently, releasing it upward into the night air. This exchange continues quietly, shaping the immediate atmosphere without drawing notice. Within this arrangement of surfaces, volumes, and intervals, the present remains extended across every space. Stone, wood, water, and air continue their steady interaction, allowing Troy to exist within this calm alignment, neither advancing nor receding, simply maintaining its quiet continuity. Along inner courtyards, shallow impressions in stone hold traces of earlier moisture, darkened slightly against the surrounding surface. These impressions retain their shape, releasing coolness upward in a faint, even layer. Air passing above carries this coolness briefly, then blends it into the larger balance of temperature. Behind low doors set close to the ground, storage spaces remain orderly through simple placement. Bundles wrapped in coarse cloth rest against walls, the fabric allowing air to circulate without disturbance. Knots securing the wraps remain firm, fibers aligned through careful tying that requires no adjustment. Across narrow bridges spanning drainage channels, wooden planks rest securely on stone supports. The grain of the wood follows the length of each plank, guiding the eye without emphasis. The surface offers a muted resilience under weight, then returns to stillness once contact passes. In covered corners where light reaches indirectly, dust motes drift slowly, suspended within the air. Their movement remains gentle and uncoordinated, settling briefly before lifting again with subtle currents. The light reveals them only when alignment allows, then releases them back into invisibility. Near interior wells, rope coils rest in wide loops along the floor. The fibers retain a slight stiffness, shaped by prior use and careful drying. The rope remains ready without tension, its form stable and accommodating. Along outer walkways, stone balustrades hold warmth absorbed earlier, offering a mild contrast to the surrounding air. Hands resting there sense this warmth faintly, then withdraw. The stone remains unchanged, continuing its quiet exchange with the night. In small workrooms set back from the main paths, fine powders used for mixing settle into shallow dishes. Their surfaces remain smooth, unbroken by movement. Color appears soft and uniform, absorbing light without reflection. Across open terraces, the sky presents a steady presence, its tone consistent and diffuse. Light descends evenly, touching surfaces without creating sharp edges. The city receives this illumination without response, allowing it to rest wherever it falls. Throughout these spaces, the present continues to spread across materials and air. Forms remain aligned through familiarity, sound disperses without focus, and Troy maintains its calm coexistence of stone, wood, and water, sustaining the same unbroken continuity within each quiet interval. Along sheltered walkways, stone columns stand at intervals shaped by habit rather than measure. Their surfaces carry faint variations where hands have rested, leaving a polish that diffuses light softly. Between these columns, open space remains clear, allowing air to circulate evenly without forming eddies. Inside narrow rooms set above ground level, small windows framed with simple lintels admit a muted glow. The glass within holds slight imperfections, bending light gently as it passes through. Patterns formed on interior walls remain calm and diffuse, never settling into sharp outlines. Near communal ovens now resting, ash remains gathered in shallow beds. Its texture stays fine and even, holding warmth close to the ground. The surrounding stone shows a subtle darkening, an imprint of heat retained without change. Across storage lofts reached by low ladders, baskets filled with dried fruit maintain their shape through careful layering. The fruit rests against itself, surfaces matte and unreflective. Air moving through the loft carries a faint sweetness that remains localized. In open courtyards edged by low walls, scattered stones serve as informal seating. Their placement appears casual, shaped by use rather than plan. Each stone remains steady, offering support without demand. The ground around them stays level, marked only by shallow impressions. Along boundary paths where the city meets cultivated plots, narrow irrigation lines trace gentle curves. Water within these lines moves slowly, guided by slight inclines shaped into the earth. Moisture darkens the soil nearby evenly, maintaining a consistent texture. Under extended eaves, clay tiles overlap in regular patterns. Their edges align closely, creating channels that guide water downward. The tiles retain a mild warmth, releasing it gradually into the shaded air below. In quiet interior corners, simple instruments made of wood and reed rest against walls. Their surfaces remain smooth, unadorned, shaped for handling rather than display. Sound remains contained within them, not released. Across rooftops and lanes, the air maintains its steady presence. Light continues to rest upon stone, fabric, and wood without emphasis. The city remains held within this continuous arrangement, each surface and interval existing fully within the same calm present, extending laterally through space without direction or pause. Along interior walls facing shared spaces, shallow shelves hold lamps trimmed with simple rims. The oil inside remains level, wicks centered and untrimmed, prepared through routine placement rather than intention. The lamps offer a stable glow that settles into the surrounding surfaces without casting sharp contrast. In corridors open at both ends, air moves in a gentle exchange shaped by alignment rather than force. The passage carries subtle differences in scent from adjoining rooms, blending them into a neutral presence. Stone along these corridors remains cool and smooth, its texture consistent beneath a passing hand. Near roof edges, small gutters shaped from fitted segments guide condensation away from tiles. Moisture gathers briefly, then slides along these channels in thin threads. The sound produced stays minimal, absorbed quickly by surrounding materials. Across compact courtyards, clay pots containing soil rest against low walls. The soil surface appears even, marked only by shallow settling lines. Leaves emerging from these pots remain still, their orientation defined by light rather than movement. Inside rooms used for quiet preparation, wooden boards lean against walls at slight angles. Their surfaces carry faint scoring from repeated use, lines running parallel without crossing. The boards rest securely, supported by balance rather than fastening. Under shaded arches, the ground maintains a uniform tone. Foot traffic earlier has left no distinct marks, the surface returning easily to level. Fine grit embedded in the stone adds subtle texture without altering its continuity. Along garden edges, woven barriers hold soil gently in place. The weave remains tight, fibers aligned with care. Small gaps allow water to pass through slowly, preventing accumulation without disturbance. In enclosed spaces where sound remains contained, echoes soften quickly. Voices from elsewhere dissolve into a general murmur before reaching these interiors. The air absorbs vibration evenly, maintaining a consistent acoustic quality. Throughout these adjoining spaces, the present remains evenly distributed. Objects, surfaces, and intervals continue their quiet coexistence. Troy sustains this calm alignment through simple presence, allowing space, light, and material to remain as they are, extending gently across the city without direction or emphasis. Across narrow interior bridges linking adjacent dwellings, planks align closely with stone supports, their edges worn smooth through steady contact. The spaces between boards allow a measured passage of air, carrying faint warmth upward from below. The wood responds quietly, maintaining its shape without sound. In recessed doorways, smooth stones set into thresholds hold traces of earlier passage as slight variations in sheen. These stones reflect minimal light, creating a muted surface that blends into the surrounding floor. The doorway frames remain steady, their proportions familiar and unremarkable. Near enclosed stairwells, the air holds a mild coolness that settles along the lower steps. Each step maintains a consistent height, guiding movement through sensation rather than attention. The walls enclosing the stairwell soften sound, dispersing it evenly along the ascent and descent. In rooms that open onto shared terraces, shallow trays hold small tools arranged by size. The tools rest without overlap, their handles aligned loosely. Metal surfaces remain matte, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The trays themselves remain level, supported by low stands shaped to fit the floor. Along outer corridors shaded by extended walls, small openings allow glimpses of the surrounding land. These openings frame patches of ground and vegetation without emphasis, allowing light to enter at a low angle. The walls around them maintain a consistent tone, unaffected by the passing view. Within covered courtyards, stone basins receive water carried earlier. The water level remains steady, surfaces unbroken. The basins rest firmly on packed earth, their rims cool to the touch. Moisture clings lightly to the stone, then settles. Near garden plots enclosed by low borders, soil maintains a fine texture. Small stones embedded within create gentle variation without disrupting the surface. Plants rise from this soil with even spacing, leaves arranged according to growth patterns that require no adjustment. Inside quiet rooms set away from open paths, woven mats lie flat against the floor. Their fibers align closely, forming a surface that yields slightly under weight. The mats remain in place, edges tucked neatly against walls. Across these connected spaces, air, light, and material continue their steady interaction. The arrangement holds without effort, each element present alongside the others. Troy remains within this extended moment, its spaces occupied by calm continuity that spreads laterally through rooms, passages, and open ground, sustaining the same even presence without direction or change. Along sheltered corners where walls meet at shallow angles, accumulated warmth lingers close to the surface, held gently within the stone. This warmth spreads evenly, blending with cooler air nearby without forming distinct boundaries. The stone maintains a consistent texture, neither smooth nor rough, shaped by long familiarity with touch. In small rooms used for storing linens, folded cloth rests in stacked layers. The fabric retains a quiet softness, edges aligned through routine handling. Subtle differences in weave appear only where light settles briefly, then fade as illumination shifts across the surface. Across open landings between stairways, low rails guide movement without enclosure. Their tops carry a faint polish from steady contact, reflecting light in muted bands. The rails remain firmly set, offering guidance through presence rather than direction. Within narrow passageways that curve gently between buildings, the floor stones fit together with minimal spacing. Fine sand fills the joints, holding each piece in place. Footsteps pass along these surfaces without resonance, absorbed by the arrangement beneath. Near roof lines, flat stones placed as weights hold coverings secure. Their mass remains centered, pressing downward evenly. The coverings beneath stay taut, fibers aligned and undisturbed. Air moves over them smoothly, leaving their placement unchanged. In garden spaces enclosed by walls of modest height, soil beds show subtle patterns where watering has settled the surface. The soil holds moisture evenly, maintaining a darkened tone. Small plants extend upward without emphasis, leaves arranged naturally within the available light. Inside workrooms set away from shared paths, shallow containers hold small fasteners sorted by shape. Each container rests within reach, supported by shelves cut directly into the wall. The fasteners remain still, their presence defined by order rather than use. Along exterior steps leading to upper levels, stone edges appear softened through repeated contact. The steps maintain their form, guiding ascent and descent through spacing that feels natural underfoot. Shadows collect along rises, creating a gentle layering of tone. Across these adjoining areas, the city maintains its steady arrangement. Air circulates along familiar paths, light settles where openings allow, and materials continue their quiet coexistence. The moment extends across these spaces without shift or emphasis, sustaining the same calm presence within walls, floors, and open ground. Along covered walkways where fabric screens hang between posts, the weave filters light into softened planes. The screens remain lightly tensioned, edges aligned with the posts through simple ties. Air passes through the openings within the weave, distributing temperature evenly without stirring the fabric into motion. Beneath shallow alcoves set into exterior walls, clay vessels rest directly on stone shelves. Their surfaces show fine variations in glaze, catching light unevenly across curved forms. The vessels remain unfilled, defined by their shape and placement rather than by contents. Within courtyards framed by parallel facades, the ground holds a mixture of stone and packed earth. Small pebbles settle naturally into shallow depressions, forming subtle groupings. The surface stays level, supporting steady movement without directing it. Under extended eaves, wooden beams span consistent distances from wall to edge. The grain of the wood follows a linear pattern, visible where light reaches across its length. The beams hold their position quietly, distributing weight along familiar paths. Inside narrow rooms used for quiet tasks, benches stand close to walls. Their surfaces remain clear, marked only by fine lines from prior contact. The benches offer support through their stable height and width, remaining ready without emphasis. Across intersections where paths cross without markers, the ground maintains a uniform tone. Movement passes through these points smoothly, guided by shared understanding rather than instruction. The space accommodates passage without drawing attention to itself. Near storage areas where tools rest on hooks, metal and wood remain separated by placement. Each tool hangs freely, suspended at a consistent distance from the wall. The arrangement keeps forms visible without inviting immediate use. Between layers of roofing, narrow gaps allow air to circulate. The air moves steadily through these spaces, maintaining balance within the structure. Materials respond by remaining settled and aligned. Throughout these connected settings, surfaces, volumes, and intervals continue in quiet alignment. The present moment remains distributed across textures and forms, sustained evenly without shift, contained within the ongoing arrangement of space and material. Along interior thresholds where stone meets timber, the junction remains clean and unadorned. The alignment follows a straight line, maintaining an even contact across its length. Dust gathers lightly at the seam, resting without accumulation. In open rooms where light enters from high openings, the walls hold a muted finish. Subtle variations in surface texture diffuse illumination evenly. The walls neither absorb nor reflect attention, existing as steady boundaries. Near low tables placed at regular intervals, the floor supports their weight without marking. The tables remain bare, their planes uninterrupted. Legs stand vertical, set at consistent distances from one another. Along exterior passages bordered by shallow channels, water traces a narrow course. The channel edges stay smooth, guiding flow without sound. Moisture darkens the stone within its limits, leaving adjacent surfaces unchanged. Within sheltered corners, stacked materials align by size rather than function. Flat pieces rest beneath curved ones, maintaining balance through arrangement. The stacks hold their form through simple placement. Under shaded roofs, where tiles overlap evenly, the pattern repeats across the surface. Each tile rests partly upon another, creating a continuous layer. The spacing allows air to remain present without movement. Across shared spaces where people pass intermittently, no marks indicate direction. Footfalls leave no trace, and the ground returns to its uniform appearance. The area supports presence without imprint. Near openings that frame sections of sky, the view remains partial. Light shifts gently across edges, outlining forms without emphasis. The opening maintains its shape, neither expanding nor narrowing. Throughout these areas, materials remain settled within their positions. Distances, surfaces, and intervals persist in quiet continuity, holding the present evenly across space without variation. Along a corridor where the ceiling remains low, the air stays evenly distributed. Sound does not travel far, settling close to surfaces. The corridor maintains a consistent width, guiding nothing beyond its own span. At the edges of interior courtyards, stone benches follow the perimeter without interruption. Their surfaces remain cool and level. Shadows rest beneath them in stable shapes, neither stretching nor retreating. Within storage alcoves recessed into thick walls, containers sit without labels. Their forms vary slightly in height and diameter. Lids remain closed, meeting rims with precise alignment. Across areas where fabric panels hang from simple rails, the cloth holds a steady drape. Folds fall according to weight alone. No motion passes through the fibers, and spacing between panels remains unchanged. Near doorways framed by unpolished wood, the grain runs lengthwise. Knots appear where growth once turned inward. The wood retains a matte surface, absorbing contact without reaction. On broad steps that rise by uniform increments, edges stay sharp and regular. Each step supports the same depth. The surface texture provides quiet stability underfoot. In places where tools rest against walls, handles align upward. Metal portions face inward, touching nothing else. The tools remain inactive, present without indication of use. Across these connected spaces, measurements hold steady. Widths, heights, and intervals continue without variation. The environment remains composed of positions and materials, sustaining an even presence across the same moment. Along a covered walkway where columns stand at measured distances, the spacing remains exact. The columns carry a simple profile, neither fluted nor ornamented. Their bases meet the ground cleanly, forming clear circles of contact. Within rooms that open toward enclosed gardens, the threshold sits flush with the floor. No rise or dip interrupts passage. The boundary exists through material change alone, stone yielding to packed earth. Across shallow basins set into the ground, water holds a smooth surface. Reflections remain soft and indistinct. The basin edges keep a consistent curve, containing the surface without pressure. Near walls finished with layered plaster, fine lines trace the order of application. Each layer rests evenly upon the next. The surface accepts light in a muted, uniform field. Under roofed intersections where paths cross without marking, the ground remains level. The crossings show no emphasis. Movement passes through without alteration to form. Inside narrow chambers used only for storage, shelves extend from wall to wall. Their supports remain hidden. Objects rest with equal clearance on each side, maintaining balance through placement. Along outer boundaries defined by low stonework, The height stays constant. The stones vary in size, fitted without visible mortar. Gaps remain minimal, holding alignment through weight alone. Throughout these adjoining areas, arrangement persists without signal. Surfaces, intervals, and volumes continue to occupy space evenly, sustaining the same quiet state across the ongoing present. Beneath a broad overhang, shadow settles evenly across the paving. The edge of the roof projects a fixed distance, creating a consistent band of shade. Light rests beyond the line without spill or emphasis. On flat surfaces used for quiet work, the grain of wood runs uninterrupted from end to end. Joints remain aligned. The planes hold steady under the touch of resting hands or placed tools. Between parallel walls, air remains still. Sound does not gather. The space holds its proportions through width and height alone, requiring no markers for orientation. At the margins of open courts, shallow steps align with the surrounding ground. Each tread maintains equal depth. The rise remains modest, allowing movement without effort or pause. Beside apertures shaped into thick masonry, the depth of the opening becomes apparent. Light passes through gradually, softening at the interior face. The reveal stays clean, free of decoration. Across long tables set for shared use, surfaces remain clear. Their length supports distribution without hierarchy. Objects placed there occupy space without drawing attention. Among repeating structural spans, distance stays consistent. The spans hold weight without visible strain. The rhythm of support remains uniform across the field of view. In areas where paths widen slightly, the ground texture stays unchanged. No markers indicate transition. Space opens by measurement alone, sustaining the same calm presence. Along the interior edge of a colonnade, the stone floor shows faint variations in tone. Each slab meets the next without lip or recess. The surface supports measured steps, and still standing with equal ease. Near low openings set close to the ground, air circulates softly. The movement remains even, passing through without stirring dust or altering temperature. The exchange stays balanced across the span. At the meeting of wall and ceiling, lines hold straight and unbroken. Angles meet at consistent degrees. The junction carries no ornament, relying on proportion alone. Within recessed alcoves, depth remains shallow. The back plane rests at a fixed distance from the threshold. The space accommodates storage or rest without defining purpose. Across courtyards framed by uniform facades, sound disperses evenly. Footfalls lose sharpness as they travel. The openness holds sound without echo or emphasis. Beside narrow channels guiding water across stone, the flow stays level. The surface reflects light in a steady pattern. Movement follows the channel without interruption. Under open sky visible through squared apertures, light enters at a constant angle. Shadows settle along edges and remain contained. The passage of light maintains the same gentle presence. At the boundary where built form meets open ground, alignment continues. Materials shift without altering rhythm. The environment sustains its quiet continuity through balance and repetition. Along covered passages where ceilings extend outward, the air holds a uniform coolness. The surface beneath remains level, offering steady contact without variation. Movement occurs without drawing notice. Near storage niches set flush with the wall, edges remain squared. The recesses keep their proportions constant. Contents rest within without altering the surrounding space. Across stretches of open paving, fine grit settles evenly between stones. The pattern remains consistent underfoot. The ground offers support without signaling use. Within enclosed rooms open on one side, shade fills the interior evenly. The boundary between light and dimness stays fixed. The transition requires no adjustment. Beside structural piers arranged at regular intervals, spacing remains exact. Each pier carries its share of weight. The alignment sustains visual calm. At shallow basins carved from a single block, water rests close to the rim. The surface stays smooth, reflecting nearby forms without distortion. The basin remains part of the floor plane. Through wide doorways left unsealed, air passes without direction. Temperature stays balanced. The opening serves passage without emphasis. Along perimeter walls extending across open ground, height remains unchanged. The wall defines space through presence alone. Continuity holds across its length without interruption. Along the base of the wall, a narrow ledge collects fine dust. The layer stays even, untouched by disturbance. Its presence remains quiet and consistent. Under extended eaves, shadow settles into a stable shape. Light holds its position along the edge, neither spreads nor withdraws. Across a sequence of stone thresholds, height stays uniform. Each crossing feels identical in measure. Contact continues without emphasis. Near shallow steps worn smooth, the surface carries a muted sheen. The stone retains a steady temperature. The form supports use without drawing notice. Between open spans framed by simple lintels, space remains clear. Sightlines pass through without obstruction. The openings maintain their proportions. Along flat roofs bordered by low parapets, air moves gently. Sound dissipates without echo. The plane holds steady above the space below. Within corners where two walls meet, angles stay precise. The junction creates stillness rather than enclosure. The meeting lines remain unchanged. Along a long corridor paved with narrow slabs, alignment stays exact. Each joint rests beside the next with consistent spacing. The pattern extends laterally without emphasis. Near a recessed doorway, the frame holds a shallow depth. Wood grain remains visible beneath a thin finish. The surface accepts light evenly. Across an open courtyard, the ground lies level. Fine grit shifts slightly under air movement. No marks interrupt the plane. Beside a low basin carved from stone, the interior stays dry. Edges remain smooth to the touch. The hollow keeps its shape. Along a row of columns set at regular intervals, spacing repeats calmly. Cylindrical forms rise without ornament. Their shadows fall straight down. Under an overhang where sound softens, footsteps leave no echo. The ceiling maintains a constant height. The space feels steady. Near a boundary wall topped with simple coping, the line runs uninterrupted. Masonry holds firm without decoration. The length continues evenly. Beyond the boundary line, the ground texture shifts subtly. Fine pebbles rest within compacted earth. The surface holds its arrangement without change. Along a shallow channel set into the floor, edges remain straight. The channel stays clear of debris. Its presence traces a quiet line. Near a set of evenly spaced vents, openings maintain their narrow form. Air passes through without sound. The spacing remains consistent. Across a plain wall washed in muted tones, pigment sits evenly. No marks draw attention. The plane absorbs light calmly. Within a covered passage, where columns recede from view, spacing stays regular. The ceiling plane continues without variation. The enclosure feels measured. Beside a low platform aligned with the paving, height remains modest. The edge presents a clean angle. The surface stays cool. Along the outer face of the structure, stone blocks align precisely. Mortar lines remain thin and uniform. The wall holds its steady presence. At the base of the wall, a narrow ledge follows the line where vertical meets horizontal. Dust settles evenly along its length. The edge remains sharply defined. A recessed doorway stands flush with the surrounding plane. The frame holds a consistent depth. Shadows rest within the recess without movement. Above, a flat roofline extends outward by a measured margin. The underside shows smooth finishing. No fixtures interrupt the surface. Across an open courtyard, paving stones align in a quiet grid. Joints remain straight and unobtrusive. The pattern continues without emphasis. Near a corner where two surfaces meet, texture changes from polished to matte. The transition stays clean. Light spreads evenly across both finishes. Along a series of low openings near ground level, grills maintain uniform spacing. Their metal bars sit parallel. The openings remain clear. Beyond this area, a retaining wall follows a gentle curve. Its radius stays constant. The form rests comfortably within the surrounding space. Along the inner face of the curved wall, surface grain remains fine and consistent. The stone carries a muted tone. Contact points stay smooth to the touch. A shallow recess near ground level holds a thin layer of settled grit. The outline keeps its rectangular form. The depth remains modest. Overhead, a narrow overhang casts an even band of shade. The shadow edge stays soft. Light disperses without contrast. Across the open span between structures, the air feels still. No movement disturbs the space. Sound remains absent. Near a junction where paving meets packed earth, the boundary line holds steady. Materials rest against each other without shift. The seam remains clear. A low parapet traces the perimeter at a constant height. Its top surface stays level. The alignment remains true. Beyond this arrangement, another plane of wall extends laterally. The surface continues uninterrupted. The environment holds its quiet continuity. The plane maintains its orientation, meeting the adjacent ground at a measured angle. Fine dust rests evenly across the base. Edges remain clearly defined. Along the length of the passage, spacing between stones stays consistent. Mortar lines appear thin and uniform. Texture holds a quiet regularity. A shallow indentation near the corner gathers cooler air. The temperature feels unchanged. Stillness occupies the space without interruption. Light reaches the surface indirectly, diffused across the wall's face. No glare forms. The illumination remains soft and level. At the far side of the enclosure, a vertical surface aligns with the others. Proportion stays balanced. Nothing draws focus beyond the arrangement itself. The surrounding air carries no scent. The ground remains firm beneath. The present holds its calm continuity. Along the extended surface, subtle variations in tone appear without forming patterns. Mineral flecks remain embedded and unmoving. The plane absorbs light evenly. A narrow ledge runs parallel to the ground, its width consistent from end to end. Dust settles in a thin, continuous layer. No marks interrupt the line. Between adjacent walls, the air holds a uniform density. Temperature stays neutral. Breath would pass through without resistance. The floor shows a blend of stone and compacted soil. Contact points remain firm. The boundary between materials stays clean and undisturbed. Above, the open space allows light to diffuse downward in a broad field. Shadows remain shallow. Edges soften as they extend. A recessed opening rests flush with the surrounding structure. Its interior remains dim. Depth reveals no detail beyond texture. Surfaces nearby retain their matte finish. No reflection pulls attention. The environment continues without emphasis. At ground level, small fragments lie scattered with even spacing. None shift position. Their presence feels incidental. The surrounding architecture holds a consistent scale. Proportions align quietly. Distances remain steady across the field of view. Air circulates gently without direction. Silence fills the enclosure. The present moment stretches outward, unchanged. Along the horizontal expanse, the surface remains uninterrupted. Fine granularity stays evenly distributed. No variation gathers attention. A narrow channel runs close to the base, shallow and straight. Particles collect lightly within it. The form stays precise. The adjacent wall holds a consistent vertical rise. Its face remains cool. Contact with the air leaves no trace. Across the open interval, space retains a balanced proportion. Distances feel measured. Alignment stays exact. Light drifts across the enclosure at a constant level. Illumination remains diffuse. No sharp boundary appears. The ground carries a muted texture underfoot. Pressure meets resistance evenly. Stability remains unchanged. A low boundary line follows the perimeter without deviation. Height stays uniform. The edge remains calm and clear. Surrounding surfaces show no ornamentation. Simplicity persists across planes. Attention rests evenly everywhere. Air remains steady within the enclosure. Sound does not form. Stillness occupies the space. The arrangement continues in quiet equilibrium. Each element holds its position. Continuity remains unbroken. A thin layer of shade lies across one section, its boundary indistinct. The tonal shift stays gentle. No edge asserts itself. Nearby, a flat segment meets another at a clean junction. The join holds steady. Surfaces align without emphasis. The floor plane extends outward with consistent grain. Fine variations sit close together. Nothing separates itself from the field. A quiet pocket of space opens between parallel faces. Proportions stay balanced. The interval feels settled. Light occupies the enclosure at a constant density. Its presence spreads without direction. Brightness stays restrained. Along the perimeter, straight lines maintain their course. Corners hold their angles. Geometry persists without comment. Air circulates subtly, barely perceptible. Movement does not announce itself. The atmosphere stays neutral. Material qualities register through contact alone. Coolness, firmness, and smoothness coexist. Sensation remains even. The arrangement continues as a stable configuration. Elements coexist without hierarchy. The present extends calmly across the space. A narrow plane reflects a muted sheen. The reflection holds steady. Its surface accepts light without emphasis. Spacing between elements remains consistent. Distances feel measured. No interval draws attention. Edges maintain clarity through uniform alignment. Their paths remain uninterrupted. Orientation stays constant. The ceiling plane rests above with even depth. Its expanse carries no feature that interrupts continuity. Tone remains soft. Sound registers as a low presence. It neither accumulates nor disperses. Silence stays layered rather than empty. Temperature settles evenly across the enclosure. No point carries distinction. The air feels balanced. Subtle textures register through proximity. Grain and finish sit close together. Variation stays minimal. The configuration persists as a calm arrangement. Forms remain present together. The moment extends across the space without shift.